Hello and welcome to the DrivingMaul show. Hi, I'm Paul and I'll be your host this evening. And at the moment, it looks like it is going to be a solo show while I cover off on some current news that is kind of old news for New Zealand rugby, in the fact that it is apparently not fit for purpose, is what we have just heard them say. And just to check my car's locked outside, hearing the beep go. And also we'll cover off on the games from the weekend as well, having a chat this evening. We'll be looking at doing my sort of Rugby World Cup preview show next week. Now, sorry, this hasn't come out on Monday. We are late with the show. I know it's a Thursday night, but hey, it has been rather fortuitous with the news that's come out today for New Zealand rugby. I'll be honest, I'm not sure if it'll be Monday or Tuesday night that I'll be able to get out to the Rugby World Cup preview show next week due to personal commitments. And basically, am I at home or not on Monday night, effectively, is what that comes down to. Chris O'Daly joined us in the live chat here down on YouTube. Says England not for purpose. Yeah, you're right about that too. I am very concerned about how England are going to go at this Rugby World Cup, to be honest with you. At the weekend, we had the sort of, not quite final round of this, and Dr. Martin, howdy, two different angles in the press about this, either exec not fit for or the provinces are not fit. The actual report, I think, pretty much says both, in all honesty, with you on that one. Robbie asked me to do an best of the Up the Wars. Yes, this is not the Rugby League show. That is on a Wednesday night, folks. Don't forget to join Brad and Richie as the Warriors have made the NRL finals this year. Boy, oh boy, they're going to enjoy that. But no, this is all Union tonight. And we'll kick off by talking about the All Blacks at the weekend, which had a record loss to the Springboks at a sold-out Twickenham. Remember that for later, folks, that it was sold out for this game of this weekend. I think, to me, this was a game that shows you how important that early pressure is. The All Blacks had the ball. Dwayne Vermeulen went down injured at a ruck, didn't roll away, but the referee blew his whistle because he didn't move after he had been hit. And there was also concern about his injury, and quite right that the play was stopped at that point. Look, it could really, that could have been blown as a penalty to the All Blacks. He didn't roll away, but no, they restarted with a scrum, which the All Blacks lost to a penalty, and from there the Springboks really didn't look back, putting that kick into the 22, getting a penalty at the line out, and just turned into pressure where the All Blacks just could never get themselves released. And boy, oh boy, isn't it funny how John joins us on a week after the Springboks have had a record victory over the All Blacks. How are you doing, John?
I'm good, thank you, mate. I thought I'd just do a little drive-by so that we can talk about Fiji beating England.
We'll talk about that as well.
I can't think of any possible reason why a South African would want to join you tonight to discuss the weekend's matches.
Dr. Wright, yeah, there's a flat All Blacks performance, no match play for weeks showed. Do you reckon that was what it was, John? Do you think it was come down to that the All Blacks just were kind of rusty, hadn't had any games for a few weeks, whereas the Springboks coming off the back of a game against Wales and were kind of ready?
Excuse me. Just dropped my camera there for a moment. No, I don't think it's that. I think it's a confluence of a perfect storm of circumstances. I think that it's disingenuous to blame all those penalties on poor discipline from the All Blacks. I think that they came about, in part at least, because of all the All Blacks adhering very much to a team plan. I think for the last 15 years, and it started at Canterbury first, and in the Crusaders, the Crusaders and the All Blacks have employed a strategy where they will do whatever it takes within their 22 to stop the opposition scoring 5 and 7. And they are prepared to give away 3 points if necessary, and they are prepared to ride the ref to the very edge of what they can possibly get away with. And I'm not blaming them. They have employed that tactic very successfully at both the Crusaders and the All Blacks. And what normally would happen in this scenario is that the opposition captain would kick a penalty or 2 penalties or 3 penalties, whatever, and the All Blacks would get out of their 22. But a combination of both what this being a warm-up game, being at a neutral venue, not part of a competition, wanting to try formations and work on moves, whatever it was, or maybe a decision by the Springbok coaching staff and leadership that this is how they're going to tackle the All Blacks. Whatever it was, Kolisi refused to kick for poles and just continually kicked into the corner. Part of his ability to do that was Manie Libbok's kicking, because that very first penalty you mentioned came from a restart that was given to the All Blacks after a stinger that Dwayne Vermeulen got on his shoulder, and so they stopped the game for safety reasons. Completely understandable, because he wouldn't know as he's lying there and he can't feel his arm if he'd had a serious neck injury. So they restart just inside the Springbok half. They restart with a scrum put into the All Blacks, and Ethan de Groot can't hold his bind. And from that, Manie Libbok makes an outstanding kick from the hand, a penalty kick into the All Black 22, and he continued to kick that well and even better going forward. And because they held them there over and over and over again, eventually there was almost no option for the ref to go to the yellow. Now, a lot of South African fans, and I know you'll scoff at this, a lot of South African fans would say 3 or 4 penalties before that. If roles had been reversed, the Springboks would have had a yellow 3 or 4 penalties before. But be that as it may, I think that actually the All Blacks were following their strategy of what they've employed for at least the last dozen years. However, on top of that came a moment of absolute stupidity from Scott Barrett. Really?
Well, that was later on. Let's try and get past the first 2 minutes, because I guess a couple of points I've got around this one was, yes, it was right to blow the whistle for Dwayne Vermeulen's who looked injured, but should that have been a penalty for the All Blacks because he didn't roll away? Now, I understand why he didn't roll away, but he didn't roll away from the tackle area. So therefore, should we really have started with a scrum, or should it be a penalty to the All Blacks? Next up, if we are restarting at a scrum,
okay, wait. Can I just answer that question? I thought about this a lot at the time, because I saw him lying there right in the path of the halfback.
Yep.
See, and I thought, oh, that's a straight up penalty. That's a straight up penalty. And I thought, he's not moving. He's just lying there. And then I thought, okay, something's, and then they called it. And what you don't want to do is you don't want players who ever find themselves in that scenario where they think they may have a major injury, thinking that they will not be protected by the ref, that they better, that if they think they're injured, they think they've broken something, they think, oh, if I don't roll away, the ref's going to ping me, right? So you remember, the referee's primary function is not to enforce the laws of the game. The primary function of the referee is to ensure the safety of the players. That's number one. Everything else comes after that. So that is the correct decision. You want to encourage the players to make wise decisions about their health and well-being. You don't want somebody who thinks I've broken something. Oh, but I'm going to lose a World Cup if I don't roll away, and something tragic happens, or they worsen an injury or something like that. So
Cool. Yeah, no,
I
very
think
good
that
point.
was the correct decision. But I do think if De Groot holds his bind, that's a completely different game. Completely.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Is if you talk about soccer or football, when a player's injured, the ball gets kicked out, and the team who have the injured player then throw the ball back to the other side, saying thank you for letting our player get looked at. So again, should we have uncontested scrums for a restart from an injury?
It's a worthwhile question to say if the game is stopped for. I mean, that's a very valid point that you raise. That if it's stopped for safety's sake, the team that was in possession get either a free kick or a uncontested scrum. I don't know.
Yeah,
but good point.
Yeah, because I think because I guess one of my points, I think what we've seen from here and also from the Auckland game as well is how important it is to get that initial territory into initial pressure in the opposition 22 and maintain it. Because someone else put in the live chat there, Elvis, yeah, I'm going to use the rusty excuse for Auckland. Absolutely, totally agree with you. One of the things we talked about in our rugby chat group was that about this was that the All Blacks All Blacks coaches have had more access to their players than the Springbok coaches have because a lot of their players play in Europe. Therefore, the All Blacks were at a more advanced stage from a preparation point of view back in Auckland than the Springboks were. The Springboks were still changing in the entire squad between games, trying combinations, just checking out how people were, and that by now it's the Springboks have caught up in their preparation for the Rugby World Cup in the same way as to where the All Blacks are on that one. I
also remember, Paul.
Let's get smashed in South African. Our South African friend reappears.
It's not. No, I'll say it again. I'll say it again. I'm here for the England Fiji analysis. I don't know what everybody else is referring to, but I would also point out that remember, unlike New Zealand, it's very easy for us living in New Zealand to forget that South Africa didn't play any rugby. Their players didn't play any rugby, the ones based in South Africa. I'm not just talking Springbok rugby, any rugby for over a year during COVID. And then when they restarted their international season, they had one game against Georgia, and then they were playing the British and Irish Lions. So when it comes to the planned evolution, and let's be frank, Rassie Erasmus and Ninaba, who have worked together for 15 years as a coaching duo in one form or another, they are meticulous planners, and they had laid out a planned evolution of the game from what they were playing in 2019, and they couldn't implement it in the 18 months leading up to the Lions test. So they are probably 18 months to 2 years behind where they thought they would be in preparation for this World Cup. So you're starting to see now the variation. They don't just maul from 2 or 4. They do short lineouts. They do balls at the front, quick balls off the front, quick balls off the back. Both 2 tries were scored from that. They've got all these variations. So there's a lot more when it comes to planning against the Springboks. There's a lot more that you have to consider in how they can actually move the ball into a place and then drive it into your defense.
Yeah, and look, lots of people talk about this game. It's like 4 or 5 days ago now, so we're not going to go too much more into well, there'll be certain bits we'll pull out, but some of the stats that I found interesting looking at the stats are that actually the All Blacks had more possession and territory. Sure, they played for about 50 odd minutes of the game, slightly more with a man down because of the yellow card followed by the red card. That also had a bearing on this. But the All Blacks, even in that situation, had more territory, had more possession. But
they had more territory inside the Springbok half, but not inside the 22.
True.
So they might have been just inside the half, but there was no comparison inside the red zone.
But also, they made the All Blacks missed 19 tackles, had to make and made 92. The Springboks missed 39 tackles and made 157. So there's a lot more work being done by the Springboks, actually in tackling defensively, and they also missed a lot more tackles as well.
But that's also very important to notice how the Springbok defensive system works. They don't mind missing tackles if it means that the player steps inwards towards the defense. So they will come from the outside in, and if you step in to miss that tackle, and the tackler drives you into where the forwards are, they don't care. So not all of those 39 tackles are the same value as the normal missed tackles, because they're actually almost shepherding the ball carrier in towards the center of the field, where they trust their forwards to make contact and their big midfield to make contact and drive the player backwards.
And also, but one area that the Springboks definitely had the upper hand was the line out, where the All Blacks lost 5 out of 15, which is big. Now, on John's comment then about where those missed tackles are from, you're seeing the Detroit 4, Mostert 4, de Klerk 5, and then you got Moody at centre with 4. That's the pushing the players back in. Willemse fullback with 3 missed tackles. That's again pushing the players back in. So that's where some of that is coming from.
And the same with de Klerk, because de Klerk is patrolling on the outside, right? So he's rushing to the outside to drive the player back in. It's a high risk strategy, and it's only possible to do if you have players playing at 11, 13, and 14 with extreme speed. Because if the ball goes over them to the outside, they need to have both the speed and the agility to turn and chase back.
I must say the Moody intercept where he loops round was impressive, and that's clearly something that you say that's part of that system, is to loop round. If you come inside, if you miss that player, loop round them to try and get the pass that they're going to give. And because you're coming from behind them, from their blind side, they're not going to see you coming there as well.
Yeah.
So that was an impressive intercept by Moody in that one.
Oh, don't you mean Aronsa
playing out of position?
Don't you mean Aronsa?
Because I thought Aronsa had a poor game at wing.
The intercept. The intercept was by Aronsa.
Yeah, but the interception I think was by Moody, wasn't it?
Yeah, but no, the interception was Aronsa and he scored. Moody's was disallowed. Moody's try was disallowed, but that wasn't an intercept. That was a worked. It was worked.
The interception rather than the actual worked move. But yeah, but I thought Aronsa had I thought he was a bit rocks and diamonds. I thought he had some poor moments in that game, and I thought he probably put himself out of being a starting winger for the Springboks.
Yeah. Look, how do you keep Colby off the field? Really?
Yeah.
How do you
I think Moody is playing very well, and his ability to move
to 13.
Moody and Willemse did interception as well, so is what Nocturne Rice is saying. So maybe that's it.
Yeah.
But so interesting tactics by the Springboks. I think people are going to have to get used to. One of the surprising things actually in this one for me was how little the All Blacks kicked. Only 18 kicks from hand. And when we come on to talk about Fiji, England, Fiji kicked more than the All Blacks did, which is something you very, very rarely see. 26 kicks by South Africa. Whereas if you remember when the All Blacks beat South Africa in Auckland, I think that kick number was up into was above 30 from memory, with a lot now not deep territorial kicks, but lots of cross-field kicks, etc. We didn't see that so much in this game. And again, was that down to circumstances that the box were closing off those and not showing pictures allowing the kick, or was it that the All Blacks decided that wasn't going to be how they're going to play this game. We don't know the sort of things but interesting. Yeah, a lot less kicking from the All Blacks in this game as well.
I did notice, I was at Mount Smart for that game, and I did notice that, and I haven't watched it on the screen, but I did notice in the first half some brilliant tactical planning by the All Black coaching staff, is that the box kicks and the chasing kicks were much shorter than normal. So the Springboks had aligned their defense to receive kicks deep, and they were dropping those kicks short. And then I couldn't work it out, and I haven't, as I said, looked on the screen, but somehow the All Blacks were getting blocking players between the defending and oncoming ball, catcher who was coming in to jump to get it. They managed to get players between that player and the ball and the contester, right? So how they quite did it, I couldn't work it out from where I was in the stands. But then in the second half, what the Springboks did, they dropped Wayne Vermeulen into that space, halfway between the receiver at the back for the box kick or the high kick, and where the DrivingMaul was. And then that changed the dynamic. So I think they obviously adjusted their patterns of where they were going to put the defenders, changed what the All Blacks could see. And also, to be fair, my main concern for the All Blacks, and I yes, I have a very soft historical watching with my dad spot for the Springboks, but my concern for the All Blacks, as somebody who lives in New Zealand, has always been Mo'unga at 10. And I'm not blaming the youngster for his shortcomings, because it's not his fault that he always plays, or 97.3% of the time he's playing behind a pack that's on the front foot. So how often, whether it's at the Crusaders or the All Blacks, does he get the ball with forwards coming at him the whole time, with getting the ball on the retreat? And there is a skill that needs to be practiced in that scenario of transferring pressure. And this is what made Dan Carter so amazing, is that even though he also played most times behind a winning pack, he had the ability to say, we are not playing here, we are playing there, way out there, people. Where's my finger? There. We're playing there, and transferring that ball.
He also had some very experienced players communicating to him from the back as well.
Also true.
We have to move on because we've got a lot to cover tonight.
Fiji, finally, England.
I've seen comments, two different styles of comments on this one. One that this is what the All Blacks needed, a kick up the bum. The other one is, oh dear, the All Blacks have to go back to the drawing board and rewrite things. Both of those are bullshit, folks. This is not what the All Blacks needed, but it's also not the end of the world either. They would have liked to have won this game. But losing it isn't the end of the world. Yes, it's a record loss. It's another record on Ian Foster's thing, which gives his critics another thing to hit him with. But as far as actually the World Cup chance of the All Blacks, this one doesn't matter that much for them.
I still think the All Blacks will beat France. And I still think that the final will be the All Blacks against the Springboks. And then, that's a different story, right? Who knows, in a World Cup final, if Kolisi will keep on kicking into the corner, right? It's a whole different scenario there. But I don't think that the All Blacks faced on Saturday anything that, or at least on a Saturday morning, anything like they will face from any other team in the World Cup. There's no other team that can do that kind of physical assault on them like the Springboks did.
So I say from that. So yeah, don't worry too much from the All Blacks. Is it what they wanted? No. Is it the end of the world? No. And personally, I don't think the game against France matters. They're going to get out the group anyway, so that game doesn't matter. For the All Blacks, for the Springboks though, is this what they needed? I think it is. I think this was fantastic for the Springboks, because I think a lot of us were walking into that, or I was walking into that first game they've got against Scotland thinking Scotland got a real chance here. And this was exactly the performance they needed so they walk into that Scotland game with a lot more confidence. And I think from a Springbok point of view, this is what they needed, and this sets them up well now.
Yes.
With what was actually the pool of death, with Ireland and with Scotland, that their next game up against a very good Scotland team. This was possibly the best Scotland team that's within living memory. It's just unfortunate for Scotland that they're up against the best team in the world in Ireland, and the third best team in the world in Scotland in South Africa.
Number two.
Number two.
Number
three now. Okay. But anyway, it's really unfortunate for Scotland. They're up against the top two teams according to world rankings in the world at the moment in their pool, because boy, oh boy, they are a good team, and it's a real shame for them. But
by the way, what's ridiculous is that in the world rankings as of today, number 1, number 2, and number 5 are all in the same group. And whoever goes through of those 1, 2, and 5.
This has been hashed so much over and over by so many people. I'm sorry, but I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. I've got other things.
No, but I'm saying whoever goes through will then play 3 and 4. So you've got 1, 2, and 5. And by the end of the second round, they will have played 3 and 4. So somewhere along the line, the recognition that FIFA, for all their mistakes, have the attitude of, we will not compromise the quality of the tournament in order to cater for the fans to come. Make the tournament great, and that will bring the fans to the tournament, rather than try and cater to the fans and maybe affect the quality of the tournament. So anyway, that's my logic.
We're going to see the semi-finals in the quarterfinal stage. It's as simple as that. Let's just move on then to the other games of the weekend. We'll just run through Scotland 33, Georgia 6. Good result for Scotland, continuing their form. Really looking forward to that opening game against South Africa. That is a real humdinger. Probably
Paul,
the game.
The loss of their captain and fullback. Isn't that a real body blow for Scotland?
No. The captain is one of the guys who got chastised for going out drinking afterwards. So I'm not sure he was necessarily that great. I'm not quite sure how that's around. Was he that good a leader within? Okay. He was the best player.
Yes.
For a long time, but his injuries had caught up with him. He wasn't the player he was. So I don't think. To me, I don't think that's such a loss.
I didn't know that. So that's good information to get.
Italy beat Japan 42-21. Oh dear. See, I was thinking Japan could really knock out Wales or Australia down to even 4th place in their pool, but it's not looking like it. Italy, well, in all honesty, look, they've got France and
You're such an Englishman.
Good luck for them.
You're such an. You want Wales and Australia to go to 4th.
If one of them, okay, I've got a video out on my Patreon, folks. That are games that could change world rugby. Those are games that can change world rugby. If Wales or Australia finish 4th and had to qualify for the next Rugby World Cup, that changes world rugby.
Why is that, Paul? Just very quickly, why?
Why? Go look at my video on Patreon that explains why that changes world rugby.
I hope my check is in the mail.
With his check in the mail, then, very briefly, essentially, there's no space in the calendar for the games they have to play to qualify for the next Rugby World Cup if you want to have your Nations Championship. Your Nations Championship, which is World Rugby's big thing that they want to have, suddenly can only happen if all the top 12 teams have automatically qualified for the Rugby World Cup next time. It doesn't work otherwise.
Wow.
So there you go, folks. Only for $1 a month, you can actually see the full one of that and name all the games that are key for that to happen. So Italy, Japan, they're Italy, cruising in. They've got a very easy pool for what they want to do, which is come 3rd, which is what they'll do. Portugal lost to Australia 17-30. Sorry, but Portugal are going to be one of the whipping boys of this Rugby World Cup. Good to see them back, but hey. Spain 3, Argentina 62. As an Englishman, that worries me. Well, not really, because Spain isn't that good, but Argentina going well, a problem there.
I think Argentina could knock over England. Argentina could seriously knock over England.
They could. We're going to come back to that at the end. Ireland 17, Samoa 13. Fantastic result for Samoa. Remember, this was
Yes.
Ireland's big team, so don't be down on Ireland. Don't worry, folks. They're going to come up kicking and screaming in the Rugby World Cup. Finally, Chile 26, Argentina 15 at 28. That's Argentina's second team. Chile, thank you for turning up. Enjoy the freaks and the wine. Yep. And then France 41, Australia 17. As I say, Australia could come third or fourth in their pool, as could Wales. But that comes down to, France look tracking well for the Rugby World Cup. Look, our top teams in there: Ireland, South Africa, France, all looking good. New Zealand, okay, a bit shaky in this last game, but the rest of the year has been has been beyond what expectations for the All Blacks fans. So I think, look, this is shaping up for a very good Rugby World Cup, as long as you accept your semi-finals are a week earlier than the quarterfinals, and the semi-finals really are going to be a pass for those top teams who will meet in the finals. It does mean, though, that you could see Fiji playing in the third, fourth playoff, which would be wow. That's a topic for next week when we do our Rugby World Cup preview, folks. So how could Fiji end up in the third, fourth playoff? Third, fourth playoff and get a bronze medal at this Rugby World Cup? We'll tell you how then. Okay. The most important or the biggest result of the weekend, not the All Blacks losing by record margin, but England for the first time ever losing to a tier 2 team.
Yep.
In Fiji. Wow. Yep. Now, even South Africa lost to Japan. They've lost to a tier 2 team before, folks. This reminds us to how big a result this was. Arguably, depending on what happens at the Rugby World Cup, this could be the biggest result of the year, in England losing to Fiji. This is upset in that same level as Japan beating South Africa at the Rugby World Cup. England have never, and this is at home in Twickenham, lost. They lost to a tier 2 team, 22-30.
I mean, South Africa shouldn't have lost to Japan, but at least it was in Birmingham or something. It wasn't. They didn't lose on the Highveld in the Fortress Ellis Park or something like that.
So this is a massive result. For Fiji, well done. I mean, and this is why the Fijian and Drua in Super Rugby is so important, folks. Is that second straight? What you've now got is a Fijian team that turn up and they're all properly strength and conditioned, properly coached, actually get to spend their entire life focusing on being a rugby player, not figuring out what their second job is, which is what they've had to do for every other Rugby World Cup until now. So massive. So that now this is what the Fiji and Drua, this is what Moana Pacifica will give to Samoa and Tonga in future. So we do need to stick with those teams. Anyone who's suggesting that we should scrap Moana Pacifica just because they haven't really done very well in the first 2 seasons, no. You take full-time professional players, add in their superstars from Europe, give them a couple of months together, give them some real good coaches as well, and hey presto, this is what you get: one very, very dangerous team. And great to see them do this.
And they play a rugby. Once they get going, it's just what a joy to watch. Yeah, and not so much. Fijian can score tries from anywhere. Better discipline these days as well. Absolutely. When's the last time we saw a Pacific Island team or a Fiji team against a tier 1 team where England conceded 10 penalties, Fiji 7? So that's what the All Blacks. That's what the Springboks. They want to get 7. They want a number that low is fantastic. Which shows you how well they're coached at the moment, how their game management has gone through the roof. On this one, brilliant. Yes, they picked up a yellow card, but look, 7 penalties to just 10. They're not getting pinned back in their 22, having to go back to line-out mauls
which is not their strength. Let's be blunt. They're not having to do that, which is great. They won 9 out of 10 of their scrums. Now, the fact they had 10 scrums just shows you how poor England's handling was and how many back-ons there were. But to have won 9 out of 10 again against a scrummaging nation in what England is, against a typically non-scrummaging nation, very good. 12 out of 15 lineouts again. Okay, not perfect, but still, that's a platform.
Improvement.
So real good things here by Fiji. I didn't see this coming. As I say, England. This has never happened to England before. I've not experienced this before. God, it's horrible. As an England fan, it's wonderful.
Look, I mean, you're an Englishman, Paul, and we are. I'm afraid it's part of your destiny, probably for the rest of your days, that when England lose, the rest of us are going to go, right? You had the mightiest empire in the history of the world. Now you got to take it, right? But what I can say is that a Fijian team of 15 players, a 15 Fijian rugby team that plays to its potential, is an exceptionally, wonderfully exciting thing for world rugby.
Absolutely, yep. Add in that they are now ranked higher than Wales in their pool. This is one thing that they have to deal with. Can they deal with the fact that they actually go into their pool as favourites to come out the quarterfinals, to qualify for the quarterfinals? That's a mindset change that I don't think they're ready for. And there's no reason why that's not a detrimental thing. That's just where they've been from, what the expectations are going into this, or going into every World Cup. But to go in as favourites, where the neutral fan has always wanted them to win, but expected them to come out and lose in the end. This time, the neutral fans going in, wanting them to win, and actually expecting them to win. Boy, oh boy, this is a fantastic opportunity for Fiji. Let's just hope that mentally that the coaching staff can get them in the right place, because boy, oh boy, it'll be wonderful to see them through to the
quarterfinals.
To the quarterfinals. Yeah.
By the way, is Radradra in the squad? Put you on the spot, sorry. Because to me, I know Peter Steph-Tutoy cracked the nod for player of the tournament, and therefore became World Rugby Player of the Year in 2019. To me, Semi Radradra was, to me, the player of the tournament.
Yes, he played at the weekend.
Yes. Okay, so, you don't know 4 years later if he's quite the same, but he just is everything that you want to see when you go to watch a game of rugby, is Radradra with the ball. Yep.
So look, it's a lot is going to depend on their number 10.
Yes, that's been their weakness for some time, is the 10.
But I do think they have now got 2 players who can play there.
Right.
It was months this weekend, but I've gone blank as the other player's name, who's been doing a very good job there.
Right.
But that game control and having that player there is key to them. But look, as I say, as a rugby fan, massively excited. As an England fan, really upset with, or not really, but really just despondent with where my team is at heading into this Rugby World Cup. It's not where, for months I've been going, we'll make it out of our pool, Argentina, Japan. I've gone blank as to the other team is that we've got. I've got the tables here. So it's England, Japan, Argentina, Samoa, Chile. With Samoa going so well against Ireland, and with where Argentina are going, look, I think Japan have faded out, so I think England will get through probably in that second place. But Argentina, again, a very good position to get themselves into winning that that pool now.
Let me ask you a hard question, Paul. Yes. Was it a mistake to get rid of Eddie Jones?
Yes.
It
Or
appears
actually,
so.
rephrase that. The timing of it was wrong. You either
Yes.
get rid of him a year earlier,
Yes, that's what I
or
mean.
you,
When
you
they
sit,
did, was that the wrong decision?
I think so. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, and he had look. He drugged people up the wrong way. There were serious question marks as to his coaching staff because he had such high turnover of his
Yes.
assistants. But yeah, no, I think it was. And a bit like for Australia, I think getting rid of Dave Rennie was a mistake because the number of injuries he had to deal with,
Yes.
and the fact that he very rarely managed to put out a side he actually a first choice team, I don't think he
Right.
should have got rid of him either. So I think the Wales situation is perhaps the only one where,
Yes.
yeah, I mean they'd lost to Italy and Georgia for the first time ever, or Georgia at least for the first time ever.
Yes.
They really were in a bad place under Pivac, and you couldn't see how it was going to. There was no track record of him taking teams to Rugby World Cups or major success. Yes, he'd had some success with the Scarlets. That's very different to an international team.
Sorry, we're talking about. I missed you there.
Wayne
Wayne
Pivac.
Pivac. Yeah.
Whereas you look at your Dave Rennie, he's had success with the Chiefs. He's had moderate success perhaps at Glasgow, but you can see that he can bring things right. But yes, so to me, it was too late for the Wales. The Welsh change is perhaps the only one there that you can you can really understand. The other ones, and bringing in Gatland, who's got the history, who's got the record of doing it for Wales. You can see how he can do. He could turn things around.
Well, I think with the Gatland thing, at least when he comes in, if it all turns to custard, he doesn't have all that pressure on him where everybody's going to say, be looking at him, because he's got history, he's got standing, and the public trust him. So they're not going to, when he sits down at a press conference, even if Wales don't make it out of the group, which is highly likely, he at least has the people's trust that he'll take them down the line somewhere. The issue that Borthwick has got is things are so bad, and he's got no history with the English public when it comes to trusting him that post this World Cup he can take them somewhere, that he looks increasingly like a man who is absolutely like under siege when it comes to these press conferences.
He has got some history as a Tigers, but he's also got some history as being the England captain who everyone thought wasn't good enough to basically own his place in the team, which was harsh, and perhaps not fair at the time. Right. The timing of when he was with England as captain wasn't. It was just unfortunate from that point of view. But yeah, we'll have to see how that one pans out. He's got a 5-year contract. You've got England,
unbelievable.
The RFU, who are sacking and removing game development officers because they can't afford them. So can they afford to pay out another coach, especially with 4 years left in his contract? I don't think so. They've already paid out Eddie Jones.
A complete left turn, and I don't want to take us off topic, but just something to think about in the coming weeks, especially if the Springboks go really deep in this tournament and maybe even win it, is who coaches the Springboks? Because if they're double World Cup winners, we know that Nienaber is leaving to go to Ireland to coach Leinster, right? Ulster, Munster, Bicester. So Nienaber's gone. I don't know if they're going to retain Russie in some capacity or not. Who takes over the Springboks? Do the Springboks, does the South African, if they are champions, do they have the chutzpah to get somebody like Dave Rennie?
Wow.
Anyway,
and one of the reasons that why so we won't go down this route because we've got to talk about New Zealand rugby in a second here. But one of the things also is the reason that Rassie is working as director of rugby in a very hands-on role is because him and Neymar have got a very long relationship of working together. Is there anyone
I
else
like
who
this.
could come in and sit there and be comfortable with the amount of involvement that Razzie has with it? I don't know.
Exactly.
Well,
exactly.
So anyway, fantastic for Fiji, disastrous for England. England got themselves, the RFU got themselves in an absolutely horrible situation at the moment, both financially and with and with the coaching side potentially, and losing domestic clubs going broke as well. 3 in the last 12 months. It says that there's some serious things wrong with rugby in England. We know there's serious things wrong with rugby in Wales. Yep.
Paul, just a final thought on that. How tragic is it that 2 weeks out from the World Cup, the final match that England will play in the UK this year, and it's only September, right? There's no end of year tour in November. That in the final match that they will play on the Friday, All Blacks, Springboks, 82,700 sellout, and in the Fiji England game the next day, they couldn't sell out half the stadium, and they had to block it.
No, they got 62,000. So that's
sorry. The last time they must have had a surge of tickets, but like on the Tuesday, it was only at 40,000 people. But normally Twickenham is sold out, especially just before a World Cup.
Yeah, no, it's glaring. A couple of things. All the South African and New Zealand expats in London weren't buying tickets because they were there the night before. Who would normally have bought tickets to that game, to England versus Fiji, because hey, when else can you get into Twickenham? So there is an element of that, but that's not an excuse. England should be selling out, and for South Africa and New Zealand to sell out Twickenham the night before, and England not to sell out, as you say, is a damning indictment on the home nation. Thank you for reminding me, because I had that on my list of things to talk about, but forgot to mention it. Normally with Northern Hemisphere, the Tier 2 game has to be sold with a Tier 1 game joint ticketing. Oh, really? Okay, because I went and saw England versus Argentina when they were a Tier 2 nation without having tickets to other games, because that's the only game we could get tickets to. So my dad took me to Twickenham. That's my only time I've been to Twickenham to go and see that game. So surprised by that, but okay, if that's how it's done nowadays. But look, that should be the only game that you could, as a normal punter, you could get tickets to go to Twickenham. So you do. So they should sell out, because it's the only game you can't get tickets to. Because you can't get tickets to a Six Nations game. You're not going to get tickets to a Tier 1 game, because all those tickets go to the clubs and get sold in the clubs. Ireland's very different to England as far as the way they sell tickets. Financially, they've had different issues in Ireland. Basically, they over-mortgaged themselves building their stadium, and it doesn't really have enough seats. But anyway, Lansdowne Road isn't the biggest stadium in Dublin. The biggest stadium is used by amateurs, not by professionals. But there you go. That's GAA for you. Okay, then let's move on and let's go off the field then. Boy, oh boy. So a term we've been hearing in New Zealand quite a bit recently is not fit for purpose. In rugby circles anyway. We've had the CEO for New Zealand Rugby come out and go, oh, the NPC is not fit for purpose. We've had New Zealand, the All Blacks Twitter feed go, oh, there's no rugby to watch this weekend, on the weekend that the NPC and the Farah Palmer Cup have been playing on. And then we've had the CEO saying that tournament's not fit for purpose. Well, one of the reasons it's not fit for purpose is because you haven't supported it and you've deliberately run it down.
Yep.
So there you go. And then we've had a report come out today that says basically New Zealand Rugby is not fit for purpose, which is a damning report when that report is written or has been commissioned by New Zealand Rugby and by the Players Association. Now, the report is 134 pages long. So I'll be honest, I've not read it all. So public disclosure there. So I am going off a couple of things. So the Stuff article about it, and also the Dylan Clever's the Bounce email, which is a good email to newsletter email to subscribe to if you can. I've not actually. I don't pay for his extended stuff, so I've only got the opening section of his article, his email from today. But yeah, let's say he's worth subscribing to. I'm going to pull out some of the things that he's pulled out. For example, the chief executive's reporting dashboard has 48 key performance indicators. Most of them are tactical at best and lacking measurability. There's just simply too much indistinguishable detail coming to the board. Sorry, Mark Robinson has a scorecard that has 48 things on. Some of them you can't measure. Hello, key performance indicator means you have to be able to measure the performance. The fact that he can't measure it, measure some of those, is a farce.
Can I just make a comment right here? And I'm going to be very careful to not be overtly political, but we have in New Zealand this issue where the true decision makers that take decisions that result in 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years down the line, things turning into custard, are long gone with their golden handshakes, right? And the current administrators sit with all the egg on their faces. Now, I'm not saying that Mark Robinson, his performance in the last 2 years has, covered him in gold dust, but I wouldn't be surprised if that 48 things that he's got on his dashboard was set up long before he started, right? And the guys who set up all these and made these decisions, like for instance, kicking South Africa out of Super Rugby, going to the regional and system when it came to Super Rugby back in 2016, all of those guys are long gone, and they're not carrying any responsibility for the decisions that are now the chickens are coming home to roost, right? And I think the famous example of this was when he's the current head of Australian rugby, and what is his name? He's from Durban, but he actually played for Wales, Marinos. That's right. Marinos took over the leadership of Sanzar, and he famously made this statement under sort of cross-examination. In an interview, he said, "Oh, well, there's never actually been a strategic plan." Right? And everybody ran with there's never been a strategic plan for Sanzar. He'd been in the job for 3 months. And Sanzar had been running for, I think it was 2016, for 20 years. It's not, and everybody, Marinos doesn't know what he's doing. For 20 years, there'd been and he's in the job for 3 months. You can't blame that dude, right? And I think we've got the pattern in New Zealand of people running for election, and then 3 years later you turn them over, and their decisions over the 3 years we live in, and nobody ever mentions who took these daft decisions.
I'd say we'll stay clear of the political side of it, please, because I'm trying to work at the elections. Sorry.
I'd say to the microphones, Paul had nothing to do with the statement. Where are they? Just make it clear.
I'm allowed to talk about rugby politics, which is what we're about to do. So we're going to keep it to rugby politics, not to politics. But look, I mean, in this one, it's as Dylan Clover says, it's not a perfect document, because basically it doesn't go and blame. Well, let me just point out. I'll just point out to you who actually paid for this document, and then we'll talk about who has been mainly blamed for this document by this document. So, engaging the commissioning parties, New Zealand Rugby Union Incorporated and the New Zealand Rugby Players Association, to review and agree at terms of reference and constitute a suitable skilled panel. Right. So this has been paid for by New Zealand Rugby, and has been paid for by the New Zealand Rugby Players Association. And the key parties here who are blamed are the provincial unions. Surprise, surprise! There we go. What a big surprise that is. Now, the New Zealand Rugby executive has also been blamed, but it's been blamed because it's scared of upsetting the provincial unions and therefore won't take leadership. So, surprise, surprise here, that the people who are getting blamed are not the ones
who didn't pay.
The people who paid for it are getting told there's a lack of leadership in New Zealand Rugby, which happens to be you, but we're not going to say you, which is kind of amusing here. So, and look, this basically comes down to, Simon said, yeah, it feels like these documents are Groundhog Day.
Quite right, Simon.
Because the document says, we all agree that the current situation isn't working, right? And I think we agree with that. And we've had a number of reports saying that. What we can't do, though, is agree on how to fix it. Because basically, there are two main ways of fixing this, or two views of how to fix it. From New Zealand Rugby's point of view, what they want to do is take control of the professional side of the game, the high performance side of the game, and control that centrally, and allow and say that the provincial unions look after purely
amateur rugby.
Amateur participation side of the game.
Yes.
And that New Zealand
amateur
rugby,
and community rugby and schools rugby and
participation. Amateur, exactly. And the New Zealand Rugby centrally controls a high performance rugby, which is where all the money comes in, funnily enough, and where they would spend their money.
Right.
The province's point of view is that actually New Zealand Rugby is strong when provincial rugby is strong, and that actually if you centralise it, you'll end up with 5 high performance units out of Auckland, Hamilton, Wellington, Christchurch, and Dunedin, i.e., your Super Rugby centres, and that everybody else, all the kids who live outside of those places, have no chance of being professional rugby players. And they're saying, no, we should have high performance structures through all the provinces so that all kids have an opportunity to play. So basically, you've got one crowd who go, what we want, the way to fix this is a centralised model. And you have the other crowd who vote. So the crowd who run the thing say want a centralised model. The crowd who vote to decide who runs the thing want to have a decentralised model. And so the two main stakeholders in this have diametrically opposite solutions to the problem, which is why we've ended up with this impasse. Because basically, you're asking, or New Zealand Rugby is asking the provinces to vote for Christmas as turkeys, and that they get wiped out of having a say, so that the New Zealand Rugby can run things their way. What this document says is the board should be appointed independently, i.e., not voted on by the provincial unions, and there should be an independent, or there should be a stakeholder committee, i.e., not the Council of Provincial Unions, providing governance. So, hence, this is basically saying, this document is saying what New Zealand Rugby wants it to do, which is saying provincial unions, your job is participation. We will involve you there, but actually running of the game should have 15 stakeholders, including Sports New Zealand, the Maori Rugby Association, Women's Rugby Association, and things. And actually, provincial unions won't have a seat on that part. There'll be 3 seats there for New Zealand Rugby, which I guess should include, for some way, the provincial unions. To make this pass, 75% of the provincial unions have got to vote for it.
Turkeys,
so, funnily enough,
turkeys, like you said, turkeys don't vote for Christmas.
You can't agree on a solution.
Yeah. It seems to me that New Zealand desperately needs another Sir Jock Hobbs to come riding to the rescue, because the leadership that he provided in 96, that period, 96, 97, 98, is really what set New Zealand up for the incredible run of success over the last 20 years, was his servant-hearted leadership, where the best for New Zealand rugby was put ahead of everything else, right? And it wasn't about who can get the best tickets to the most number of test matches and who can go on whatever junk it might be to Johannesburg. So maybe it's time to put out the distress call and say, not Sir Richie, please will you come riding to the rescue and lead, with that, some leader with that kind of mana to bring everybody together and say, we're going there, right? You may not like it, but we're going there because that's what we need, right? And pull the people together.
Well, yes, we'll see. Dave Moffat has said that the club's provinces need to pull their finger and call an extraordinary meeting and take control. Something that Dave Moffat kind of something similar, I think he said in Wales recently when he tried to get back into being CEO of Wales Rugby again. We've had Dave Moffat on the channel before, interesting one there.
Wasn't he the previous head of New Zealand Rugby, David Moffat?
And also Welsh Rugby, yes.
Okay, but was he the one that worked with Brent Impey? Or am I thinking of somebody else?
No, that's Steve Chu.
Steve Chu. Okay, sorry. Because Steve Chu and Brent Impey are the major people responsible for this mess that we're in right now.
Agreed. Yep.
And Moffat was prior to Chu, right?
Moffat was prior to Chu, sometime prior. I don't know if he was immediately prior or before that even.
So probably early 2000s or something like that.
Late 90s apparently. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Well, there's an example there. If he was in the late 90s, he would have been in that sort of Sir Jock Hobbs era, right? Where Sir Jock Hobbs was the chairman, and Moffat was probably his executive manager of the or whatever it is, president, whatever it may be.
Yeah, I'm not show my ignorance here. I will show my ignorance here and say I don't know as to what combination they had that fixed things. But look, what we've got here is an agreement across the board that the current system does not work. Right? It is broken. Everybody agrees that. The problem is we cannot get agreement as to how to fix it. The fix that's being suggested by New Zealand Rugby requires the people who are going to be the most impacted or the most stood down from their current position of prominence to vote for it.
Yes.
Something's got to change. The problem is
what?
How do you get the people who are going to be the most impacted or the most negatively impacted by that change in their point of view to vote for something like this?
And what really concerns me as well, Paul, is that if South Africa do win the World Cup, which means that for the first time they will have carried over some level of dominance from one World Cup to another, even though they did have a dip in the middle. And then they have obviously a tremendous marketing appeal. And they decide, you've always said it's very difficult to actually pull it off, but if they potentially bring huge numbers of eyeballs to the Six Nations and they get invited to join that competition and leave Sanzar completely, what does New Zealand do income-wise?
Oh, look, and I hate to sort of, that becomes we have already got a game that is seriously concentrated into a very few number of nations, right? We know that by the fact that we've only had 4 nations ever win the Rugby World Cup, right? Yes. We've only ever really had 5 nations who ever even looked like winning the Rugby World Cup. That's expanded to 6 this time, right? France is the only other team that's ever looks remotely like winning it. Now Ireland, for the first time ever, look like they have a chance. If South Africa join the Six Nations, then basically Australian and New Zealand rugby die, and you basically go from being something that has about 10 top teams to only having 6. It concentrates it and kills off rugby even more. So to my mind, it would be the end of international rugby if it were to happen. I can't see it. I can't see the extremely traditional Six Nations voting for it either.
But if the money talks,
money does talk. I agree. But remember, the Six Nations were something like 12 years after the Rugby World Cup in adding bonus points. It took them 12 years. So they move extremely slowly on these things.
Yes.
So yes, money does talk, and money is a big issue, particularly for the RFU currently.
Yes.
And also the Welsh Rugby Union. So you got 2 votes straight away if there's money involved. Ireland, Scotland, France, not so much. Italy would vote against it because it means them getting kicked out, essentially. LB says the Six Nations don't even want Georgia. So they won't add the box. Look, they'd add the box well ahead of Georgia. I'm sorry, but Georgia has no money. It's not it's financially country that has an economy.
They won't bring eyeballs to the screen. That's the problem.
They won't bring eyeballs to the screen, and they don't have any domestic eyeballs to pay for things. Whereas the Springboks do have a certain level of cachet. It's not as big as the All Blacks cachet, as we've seen the All Blacks fill out stadiums in the USA, which is a totally non-rugby place, but it still is. But they've also got a very big domestic eyeball audience as well that's significant.
And they have this. The thing is, they have the second largest cachet. They're not the All Blacks. The All Blacks is way up here, right? But so far as marketing around the world, as a general impact, the Springboks are the next one down, right? And if that's why I say if they do win this World Cup and they do have that pull, that marketing pull, and they've got his talismanic captain, and he's part of a major, I can't remember which one it is. I think it's Jay-Z's, whatever his marketing group. That group also co-owns the Sharks, and they get involved and they present something to the Six Nations that does some tables and addresses some of these cash flow issues for the Premiership clubs in the UK. It will be bad news for New Zealand rugby.
Absolutely. Well, I think it'd be bad news for rugby globally.
Generally,
not just New Zealand rugby, but it'd be death of rugby New Zealand. Look, this is another report saying that we need to change things in New Zealand. But I just can't see how it's going to happen, because I say it's they're and I don't agree necessarily with what's being suggested here. I'm not sure I agree also entirely with the provincial unions, and the provincial unions are not blameless, folks. They could do a lot better at marketing their own game, than they do, and they should do a lot better marketing than they do.
I mean, have they really capitalized on their women winning that incredible World Cup win last year?
Look, I mean, LB says Razzie has said before that he won't leave the Rugby Championship. He knows that it will do to the box and rugby as a whole. Sure, we've also had New Zealand rugby, and I'm not going to tar Razzie with the same brush, but New Zealand rugby say before that actually one of the things that makes the All Blacks strong is traveling to South Africa and playing Super Rugby there. All right,
it
didn't stop them leaving when it was appropriate for them. Times change for folks, right? Just because they say something at some point, what they say then, people are allowed to change their opinions. Their opinions do change, right? Just because someone said something at one point,
there was a comment just before that about rugby barring France and SA being run in a very elitist manner to the detriment of all other nations in each individual nation. So it's being treated as a very elitist sport. I didn't note the name of the previous comment, right? That's by the reviewer. And he's got a point there. Certainly, it's a much more working man's game in France. It's very much a working man's game in South Africa for sure, right? But yeah, I think that the problem
South Africa have reached out to Georgia and have put into play a working agreement with them to help them grow Georgia.
Yes.
France also has also done a lot with Italy, with Argentina,
Yes.
and also with Georgia as well. Those two, they know they're not part of the. Well, France says it's not part of the Anglo-speaking bloc in the Six Nations,
Yes.
so it does work with other about growing, about trying to grow the game. And
Yeah.
South Africa, look, it is very much it's a long way away from anybody else, and has helped. Look, they had they've had I think a Georgian team in the Curry Cup. They've had an Argentinian team in the Curry Cup.
Yes.
They've put in a Namibian team in the Curry Cup.
I mean, Argentina rugby exists because of South African rugby going back to the 60s. South Africa sent coaches over there in the 60s to coach the game, right? It's one of the reasons why, in fact, it is the reason why the Pumas traditionally were such a strong scrummaging nation, is because of that South African influence in growing the game in the 60s.
So yes, we agree with the review there. Yeah, look, France and Africa, look, I mean, they still do look after their own interests to a certain degree, but they do make a bigger effort than your RFUs, than your New Zealand rugbies. Look, New Zealand rugby, the fact they've only played one test in the Pacific Islands ever is a disgrace. Let's be clear here.
It's a shocker. It's a shocker.
Tier one nations have been looking after themselves to the detriment of the game as a whole. If they grew the game as a whole, they're having the same size slice from a bigger pie gets you more stuff. But fighting for a bigger slice of the same pie doesn't help everyone else. Doesn't help you in long term, which is what we've seen.
And let's not forget what France, whatever the skullduggery that France did to get this World Cup, by the way, for all the fact that they grow the game, they pulled off. One day, some investigative journalist is going to find out who got this and who got that and who got other to get the IRB to vote against, or World Rugby, whatever they were at that time, to vote against their own recommendation from their own committee, and give this World Cup to France rather than to South Africa. So something was somewhere, right?
And folks, don't worry. John will keep these chips on his shoulder for a few more decades.
I try to keep it balanced. I have a few on each, right? A few on each.
On one side, it's the fact that South Africa got chucked out of Super Rugby, and the other side is the fact that South Africa lost. That France stole the Rugby World Cup from South Africa.
Yeah. Yes, and I forget his name. That Australian referee that said to John Smith, yes, you can go talk to your players, and then let the guy take a quick tap and score a try, and then go away. I don't want to talk to you. That I forget his name. Hodge, was it Hodge? Anyway, I've tried it. You can see I've moved on and dealt with it.
John's moved on. Absolutely. Look, so folks, there's a lot more to go through. Obviously, that recommendation report by the New Zealand Rugby have commissioned, and the players have commissioned. So it's got 134 pages. There's a lot more in there. If you want to go and have a read of it, please do. It's repeating a lot of stuff that was being put into reports over the last three or so years that we've had. It's saying the same thing again. Things aren't sustainable. Things need to change, but there don't seem to be any solutions. And again, their solutions, yes, they might fix some of the governance issues. Would they actually fix anything to do with are there any suggestions in this report or in the summary of recommendations to improve participation? I don't see it, folks. At the end of the day, and that's the big problem, is participation. We do need to improve that.
Let me tell you, there is a problem about participation at schoolboy level. I've just had one son who's 20, one son is 18, is about to finish year 13. He's in one of the newest schools. They both were in it from the very beginning. The older one from the very beginning. One of the biggest schools in Hamilton, a newly built school in maybe the largest suburb, the fastest growing suburb in New Zealand, which is Rototuna in Hamilton, and they battle to get a second team at times to play. at that school. It's got, I don't know, 1,600 kids in it, right? It's a massive, massive school. And participation at rugby is so low and engagement is so poor, right? And that should be like a targeted school for a union to say, we want to help this school that draws from such a big area to set up a viable, vibrant rugby system to bring through players, right? And when I see that, if you'd said to me when I came to New Zealand 7 years ago that I would see rugby participations dropping like this in New Zealand at schoolboy level, I would have said, never, that's crazy. But here we are.
So the reviewer says, do you think that rugby union will still be the biggest sport in New Zealand 30 years from now? LB says that everyone in New Zealand is playing soccer and basketball at school level now. Basketball, particularly in the North Shore, is causing some problems for harbour rugby, definitely. Look, do I think rugby will still be the biggest sport in 30 years' time? Possibly, but what it won't be is as big and as dominant as it is now, right? It might still be the biggest because there is a massive gap between rugby and the next level down, financially speaking. The amount of money that rugby gets and the amount of money the next tier of sport gets, it's a chasm. It's an absolute massive gulf. So rugby might still be the biggest one, but it won't be the biggest one like it is now, which at the moment it's the only show in town, right?
Yeah.
If you're looking at sponsoring internationally, it's the only sport you can really sponsor. Even cricket is way down. Yes, I think it probably will still be the biggest sport in New Zealand, but it won't be. But there'll be other sports getting close by then. Is my expectation.
Unless we get a turnaround, that's my hope. Is that
unfortunately we lost John there. Look, he hopes for turnaround. We all hope for the turnaround. We do hope that one of these reports will actually lead to proper change. But let's see if it happens. So thank you everybody for joining us. I'll be back next week with my Rugby World Cup review. I'm not sure if that'll be Monday night or Tuesday night. We'll see if we can get John back for that one. Hopefully we'll also get Steve back as well from down in Dunedin, Cornflake. So thank you everybody. Have a great night and catch you all next week.